welcome to a new episode of the Customer Growth Podcast, this time with Lara Barnes, Senior Vice President of Customer Success and Renewals. Super excited to have her. Thanks for being my guest. And we have a very exciting topic. Customer success is part of the GTM Motion. So a lot of noise about that. And we will also, in combination with that, deep dive in how to get recognized and drive revenue as a CSM team. So super glad to have you, and please give a little intro to yourself, Lara.
Thanks. So Lara Barnes, and I am VP of Customer Success and Renewals. I've set up everything in my last company and been running with the whole process from end to end, from setting everything up all the way through to creation of the customer success and renewals team, focused on customer lifetime value and those customers through the whole life cycle as well. Everything from my world is about revenue and growth, and the retention of those customers is exceptionally important, and how we then help those customers through, and a byproduct of that is the growth of those customers. But my real focus around how my team are established internally is a real part of what I wanted to talk to you about today. How I have done that over the years has put me in a great position, and I'd love to be able to share a lot more around that in how customer success should be part of the go-to-market.
That's super exciting. Thank you very much for the intro, and I think we will have lots of exciting topics to discuss and deep dive today. So as you mentioned, you set it up from the ground basically, and also with the focus on driving growth and driving revenue. At least these times, you don't see that too often. I think there's a big movement in that direction, but basically customer success as a revenue driver and also the motion to go to market is quite not that accelerated in the market, so to say. So why is it coming up now, and what's the focus of all that? That would be really excited to understand.
So I'm sure you've seen over the past 18 months, there's a lot of change in the market, a lot of change with businesses really focusing in on margin and looking at the costs of the business versus what they've been spending to acquire customers, as well as the overall revenue growth. New revenue growth hasn't been as high as it has been over the past 5 years. And so that's been born out of the situation we were all in with over COVID, and then the accelerated growth of investing, and then inflated teams and inflated costs, and the revenues dropped, and now they need to look at what their margins are. And so unfortunately, customer success has been, and it's been, across the board on those companies, not just around customer success, but I'm sure a lot of you have actually seen that customer success managers have been laid off. And my focus over the past, few years has really been about how I've established my team internally to be part of that go-to-market. So what does that really mean? Well, we were tracking before we really became that part of go-to-market with the sales team and with the marketing team and the partner team that would be, finding these leads. We were tracking ourselves in a spreadsheet what we were doing. So we were understanding what that opportunity was in Salesforce. We would track where that opportunity ended up landing, because we knew we were passing those leads over to the sales team. And we were interested to see what impact we were having on the overall business. So we started tracking these and in that first year, we thought we drove 4 million, but we weren't tracking everything. And 4 million in terms of, overall book business. Mm-hmm. And then in the second year, after I had started to float these ideas around the business that perhaps, we were driving these leads that were converting and we should be accredited for that. And perhaps we should begin a spin. So we started off at 1% of the overall value of the opportunity. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's what we started off at. And some of those leads don't get accepted into sales accepted leads, sales. So we were giving the customer success team a smaller amount, not 1%, like 0.15%, I think. So to bring in a lead, that's what they were getting. And then if a lead converted, they'd get 1% of that, and they were given a spiff for that. We were doing that on a quarterly basis. We were given a target of 50 million of leads in alignment with other departments as well that had their own targets. So now we're on the dashboard. And once you get yourself on the dashboard, you're on the hook, which is a scary place to be, but also a great place to be because now you're part of that whole go-to-market flow. So, we would be looking at that dashboard on a regular basis, and we were KPIing ourselves on that dashboard. So internally, those CSMs had KPIs around driving leads. But, that's where it comes down to quality of the leads that we were focused on were born out of successful and happy customers that wanted to buy more from us, who wanted to understand what else we had within our suite that could help them across, the overall tech stack. And so they weren't just random leads, because those leads started to convert business and customers were happy and they were buying more from us, and happy customers only buy when they're getting value. So what we did was that first year, we saw that we were driving 15 million in book business just from our leads, which is significant numbers. And then the following year, we started tracking it even more. So that year of 15 million, our conversion rate was 26%.
Oh, well, I just wanted to ask that what's in terms of conversion rate, because basically the conversion rate from these qualified or success qualified leads is much higher than in terms of like sales or marketing or whatsoever. So that's a really great number in terms of conversion rate.
We were doing quite well there. However, the thing that changed year over year was now the sales team knew we were part of the go-to-market. Now they knew that we were providing them with, CSQLs, so customer success qualified leads. And what we needed to do was, I knew we could be converting at between 40 and 50%. So this next year, what we did was we really had strategy within the CS leadership team to be following up and going to those sales meetings and saying, we've submitted these leads, what are you doing about it? Because a lot of the time things fall through the cracks, and sales managers at AEs are very focused on what they're doing in the moment, and they're looking for the new hot lead because they need to close something in that quarter. And so we really focused in on how we were working with the sales team. And the more we focused in on it, the more our leads started to convert. So we got to 45% in conversion in that second year. It was quite cool.
Amazing.
And what we really saw was that our leads were, the sales team leads were taking 90 days to close their own lead. Ours were closing in 45 days. So, that was where it really started to show that we were doing the right things in how we were working with the sales team. And we ended up driving 18 million that year in sales, in qualified leads. Yeah. We weren't converting them. We were passing them over to the sales team. We still had 8 to 10 million in leads coming out of that year that we put in that was still in pipe. So we knew we were still going to be, helping contribute and having an impact on that following quarter going into the new fiscal year. So how you actually operate and work with those sales teams in the regions, that's going to really help show what value you bring. They want leads that are hot. They want to be able to close leads within quarter. And also, if you're showing that your leads are converting faster, they're going to want to work with you because they like you filling their pocket. And as a byproduct, and it's a very tiny amount, because we're not there to drive say, it's a difficult fine balance, right? We're there to help growth, but we're not salespeople.
Yeah.
So how we're compensated is just a small split on closure. And so it's not as if our overall comp is driving that as well. Our overall comp was measured on many different things: retention, yes, growth, but advocacy was huge. We were really focusing on the overall picture, as well as gross and net retention were metrics that we were focused in on. But it was about the adoption and the success of those customers was our overall focus in how I'm doing.
That's a really nice example in terms of like the one leads to another kind of, because like you're building the customer relationship, understanding what brings value. And then the outcome out of this is basically CSQLs, the customer success qualified leads, And also in a byproduct, which is very nice, a good term in a good part to drive like the co-building sales and success, because there's often, as you mentioned at the beginning, some friction and I don't know, some fear in terms of like not getting it all or splitting the amount kind of. And so this is a really nice intro into working with sales basically.
We had to tell sales AEs many times, we're not getting part of your commission. This is your commission. It's very separate for us and it's tiny. We're not doing it we're doing it for the growth and the better stickiness for the customer rather than for our own needs of actually driving a lead to get some money. It wasn't money driven because we were given such a tiny percentage. It was more around driving stickiness so we can retain those customers and drive a better experience for them. That was always at the back of our minds because we're there to serve the customer and that's who we work for. So we were very much there to assist in helping drive stickiness. And when you do see the metrics of customers that have one product versus 2 or 3 products, the retention is far greater. So that's what we want to do. Our main focus is to retain those customers.
Yeah, super, super exciting and great example, I guess. And as you mentioned, and as we will also deep dive later, it's one part of that. And you mentioned also a lot of other KPIs. Success is tracking, is following, like adoption, usage, retention, all these kind of things. So that's also quite exciting if we look into that a bit later. But maybe in general, because this whole discussion we are just bringing up, in my opinion, comes a little bit late. I know there was like the pandemic and then there was a lot of change, but maybe also from your standpoint and from your opinion, why just bringing all these GTM motion with customer success up right now and not before? Because it was basically all there and all possible also before the pandemic. But I know there was more money, there was more like go-to-market power in these areas. But maybe from your opinion, why not starting earlier with this?
Well, I think when you look at how a business currently runs, it's either sales driven or it's product driven. And majority of the time, the businesses I've worked in have been very sales driven, and customer success happens after the sale. So it's an afterthought rather than part of the go to market in how you retain and grow customers. And within sales teams, there are new business sales teams and account managers running existing portfolios. So the growth of those customers. And hopefully there's also a customer success person that's also working with that AE or that account manager to help drive forward the adoption and the value framework of that customer. But now there has been quite a shift. Those CSMs have been removed in some companies, and it all lays on the shoulders of the AE or that AM. And that's quite a difficult position to be in because they're there to drive sales because they're very good at that and that's what their skill set is. And they're not there to help the customer with, escalated tickets or a situation that they have found themselves in order for, the adoption piece to move forward. And that has been something that many companies over the past year to 18 months have decided to do. And my feeling around that and my thoughts around it is that that's a short-term measure because they've needed to reduce cost. And unfortunately, because customer success was seen as after the sale, that has, and also lots of customer success teams are not measuring what they should be measuring in terms of the value that they're contributing towards the company. And this is why my thoughts around it is that if you're very focused on measuring your CSQLs and your advocacy, what value, and showing what value you're actually driving, not just in the growth part, but also definitely the retention and the risk mitigation. There are many, many times that customers come at risk and that's not reported on. and the CS team gets on with it and works cross-functionally across all the different teams, across the business, turns it around, gets the customer to where they need to be, and it's never reported.
Yeah.
The risk mitigation also needs to be another focus for leaders to show what they're doing to help turn around. The risk at the beginning of the month was X. The risk at the end of the month is X. So it needs to show that you're actually removing that risk off of the table, and that customer is actually in a good place again. So there's also another metric that should be a huge focus. I think it's about how companies are aligning themselves, and I hope that the customer life cycle within those companies are also being looked at during those changes. And I kind of know the answer, which is very infrequently, because understanding that customer life cycle and understanding those moments that matter during that whole process then dovetails really nicely into the whole go-to-market. And everybody across that whole customer life cycle needs to be KPI'd, and it needs to flow, because the impact that marketing has based on a product that's built, whether it works or not is another thing, has an impact on what you can go sell, to then go and close that contract and hand over through to implementation is absolutely critical, through to how that customer adopts it and then renews it, and you could potentially grow that customer, right? So if that is looked at across the go-to-market and everyone is KPI'd and it's aligned, and that is never the case in the companies I've worked in. Everyone has conflicting KPIs. Yep. So if you look at it from a holistic view, even if you did remove certain costs in certain areas and you still had that overall view, you'd have a much better understanding of what that customer experience is. And then that's going to show the advocacy, the growth, the retention.
Super good point. Maybe two additional ones, because that reflects a little bit the approach of never stop selling, right? So everyone has a special function, and then it's more a flywheel than so much different departments and really siloed as it was in the times back. And on the other hand, as you mentioned, the conflicts in KPIs and ownership, what would you say in terms of like how the org structure should be organized? Is it an org structure topic, or is it more in like overall managing director, CEO, OKR problem? How to solve that in terms of like aligning the KPIs through the different teams?
I would say that it's not an org problem. If we start getting into orgs, we start getting into silos again. I think it's definitely looking at how the customer should be experiencing your product. What is the end result of that? And then work back as to how you actually get there. And then how do you drive the KPIs in order to drive that across every part of the org who touches that customer? And I've never done it, but I know it would work much better in practice than actually doing it. We nearly got there at my last company. We did the whole project, but I haven't actually personally done it in practice, but I know it would work so much better than the siloed approach that we currently have. It needs to be around the customer experience. We did a massive project across the whole company, and there was so many people involved. It was brilliant. And the momentum that we built around the customer lifecycle was fantastic to really help solve some of the gaps and problems we had, because everybody was siloed.
Yeah.
And a lot of those gaps and problems were around, go-to-market process and the documentation and how and who we went and pitched the product to, and the collateral that we used, as well as the training documentation. A lot of it was around how customers experienced us. What was the end result? Not about how we're operating internally. It was about the end result of all those touch points that you touched that customer and what they were experiencing in order for them to get the best value out of the product. So I know it would work to that, degree, because then you're removing the silos and everybody is KPI'd based on that whole customer experience.
Yeah, that very good point. And I think it's coming exactly, and it's also logical, right? To say, okay, we are placing the customer in the focus, in the center of all, and then we are working our way back to align the teams basically on the outcome the customer should experience. So some companies, and I experienced that myself quite often, then KPIs are not aligned, the KPIs are conflicting, and then you're moving from that customer-centric view to a very internal view, and then everything is not going nuts, but you have a lot of friction in the different stages of the customer, and also ownership issues, all these kind of things. So that's a really exciting one.
I've come across one company that does it exceptionally well. And I know you're going to ask me their name and I can't remember it, but I listened to a podcast twice. I need to do this. And it was their chief customer officer talking about how they'd actually done it. And I was so in awe that they had done it.
Okay.
Yeah, I listened to the podcast twice and they had aligned it. They had aligned the whole business to it. And I can come up with that name.
Yeah.
I'll look it up after this.
We will also share that for the audience later to see what's a good example for that customer centricity kind of ways of working. That's
it was
really interesting.
It was inspiring that they'd done it. And it was basically the project that I had run, my last company, they had gone and put into practice. And I got to really getting there and doing it.
Let's go. Maybe if you want to share, if you can share, because you have been nearly there. What were the blockers or what hindered you in like bringing it to life? Maybe if you want to share or can share like kind of these things.
It just got to the exec level and they were very enthused about doing it. And then we had a change of focus internally and that was what caused it. But they were all very much on board and they were very much there to help do it. And then the change of focus came from the board itself. And then that stopped it, which is a shame. So I would
really, if you have been that close, it's really a shame because then it feels a bit, you have been nearly there and just a little piece was missing kind of.
I think the success that I had really driven in there was actually bringing and aligning the whole organization. That was what the success was. And it was like the constant communication, going to all of those exec level leaders and then their teams and communicating through as to what we were doing. We had individuals across 12 different departments that came to 30 workshops.
Wow.
And over a period of
big
3
project.
months.
Yeah.
It was big, yeah.
Really
and people committed and they were doing like a couple of meetings a week. So it was a big thing and everyone was so much on board. Yeah. It was fantastic to be in because the momentum grew and we worked with HR around customer culture and what we wanted to put in place in terms of becoming so customer first because it was one of our values. And there was a huge momentum, not just from me, but from so many other departments and leaders across the business. And then, yeah.
Well, I guess it's always a shame, but as you mentioned, I think you also was winning a lot out of that because you all committed on that project and you was quite involved in all of that. So I think at least it brought some positive aspects to the company, at least, even if it was not fully live in the end. But yeah, I can totally understand. That's like, but very interesting project, and I think more companies should really have that overall view and that customer-centric focus to work with.
I remember the company. It was MongoDB.
Yeah, I know that. Okay.
There's a really good podcast done, and I can share the link with you, and you can post it up. But
yeah, perfect. We will share that. That's cool.
Yes, to have something on it. Yeah.
Super exciting. So as I see, time is flying, kind of. So let's maybe for the last 5 minutes try to understand how to start a movement like that. So if exactly the ownership, the transparency, all of that is missing in my CS team or for me as a CS leader, how could I start with that? How could I make it more transparent? What are maybe, in your opinion, first steps to go through to bring that to life?
In terms of KPIs or customer lifecycle?
Let's start with customer lifecycle maybe, and then go to the KPI framework a bit in the end.
So there were so many things wrong across the organization. There were so many gaps. So it was actually articulating what those gaps were to my chief customer officer across, how customers were experiencing it, using your NPS data, using CSAT data, using product feedback data as well. and what customers are saying in terms of like health score or engagement data. So overlaying that picture, but taking some tangible things out and putting it into, in every department, these are the things that are missing. Can I go ahead and do this project to really understand how we can align the whole business to a customer lifecycle? And that took a few months to get there, but I did the sign off. And then I did work with an external party, because it's very difficult in your day job working and doing a project that size. So we worked with a company who were exceptional, and they helped us align everybody end to end. And there were just so many gaps that came out. Everyone realized that we were working in silos, and it was so good to pull everybody again, across the team, across the customer experience, to really understand what customers were experiencing. Because in customer success, we hear it all the time. We've got a very privileged position because we see everything end to end. But you've got all these departments on one call, and they're seeing what customers are experiencing rather than just from their tiny little frame that they see it in. So that was a really good opportunity. But I did, as part of the sponsorship of this project, I went to all the ELT members, presented at the ELT to my CEO, but then also went to each of those teams, and then went down a couple of layers in terms of leaders, and went and presented to all of those teams and gave regular updates. And momentum just created this whole wave, which was amazing. And then I would, talk about it when I was invited to the CEO all hands, and I'd talk about it then. So there'd be more engagement and kind of momentum built. And coupled with that, I was working with HR, and they were very much engaged around driving this customer first culture. And so they did customer first workshops to really understand how we can be better ourselves internally. What do we need to do more of or less of in order to be so much more customer first? So that was another momentum that we built. And it was, just that constant communication. I had people pinging me all the time saying, what are you doing about the customer lifecycle project? What's the next stage? How and where is it going? What do we need to do as a team? How can I help? So the momentum grew so much. It was just a fantastic position to be in running something like that. It's great for also, my visibility as to what I was trying to drive across the business, which was a customer first culture. And it really helped kind of get out of that mindset of just selling, really helped give everybody a bigger perspective.
Yeah, super good ones. So I think it's basically, as you mentioned, around aligning all departments, and it's basically also a lot of change management. So as I understood, you really went down the layers, and you updated everyone on the progress, but also on the project. So everyone has a vision in mind and is going in the same direction. So super good. And maybe, as you said, the second part would be after customer journey or life cycle is a little bit more under the KPI framework. So to align the different teams on the KPIs. Maybe you have some insights in the last couple of minutes for the audience on the KPI part.
The impact of the life cycle was that we did have gaps filled, which was great. And also it did have a positive impact on NPS. So because we were doing so much more in different departments, had that overall impact. So I did see a byproduct from the project. It wasn't a waste of time. I just didn't get to align everybody in the business to one set of KPIs to help go end to end. But next time. So the KPI piece is very much, you have to understand what value as a customer success team that you're driving. And not just it's about the renewals you're doing every quarter and the renewal rate and how much you're increasing on a contract from the CPI increase. It's also about how you can help drive additional years in that contract in terms of the term. So taking a customer from 12 months to 3 years in terms of getting more commitment. But it's also about how you get value for that customer and how do you actually track that. We built a value realization framework where we could track that based on the features that customers were using and were they getting to 25, 50, 75% adoption of the platform. So, and then we linked it via customer success objectives. So the kind of customer success plan. So we did that, and that was really insightful. because we had telemetry, we could also really understand how customers were using the platform too. The other area is definitely advocacy. You have to understand who your biggest advocates are and how they're helping you go win business, because they want to come and talk about what a great job you're doing, driving those advocates and actually driving the case studies and ability for those customers to stand on stage and be present with you and talk about the great work that you're doing together. That's also really important. Utilizing CSAT, using your support, working with support and using CSAT and how your professional services team are also doing in that whole process. It's not just about customer success.
Yeah.
And then, making sure that you're feeding back all of the product updates, because if you're not feeding back to product, they're building a product that customers may not be using. And that's so important. My next thing, I definitely would love to see how product are attached to the renewal, because product is such a driver for renewal and the success of that customer. So that would be an incredible development in the customer success industry when that happens. And obviously, with customer success being part of go-to-market and driving an overarching KPI alignment, I'd hope that would be something that would come out.
Very, very great. And actually, I love these thoughts and these ideas. So I think there's a little bit movement into that direction, but also a lot of possibilities. So happy to talk in a few months or in a year again and see what developments have been happening in this field. And also what I really love and what's often forgotten is a most of the time, very large support service team and leveraging like CSAT and all that feedback coming in these terms, because you say customer success, and then it's mostly the customer success managers and these kind of teams, but not that often that you really use the CSAT and the valuable feedback they get every day, basically every hour from the customer. So that's also very, very cool. You mentioned that, and a good tip for everyone, I guess, to leverage that feedback. So, La, thank you very much. Unfortunately, the time is already over. I think we could have spent one more hour, to be honest, on all these topics. But it was a big pleasure having you, and thanks for all your insights.
Yeah.
Happy to have, like I said, next episode in a few months' time and see what developed in this kind of time frame. So thanks again. It was really great having you on the Customer Growth Podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's been a great discussion. Thanks, Christian.
Thanks.